we are all like playing this game of life together, and I think that we have to give ourselves a break and say, you know what, we have good days, we have bad days, we make mistakes, we do great things, like just accept it all, whatever it is, and move forward and make the changes that you feel you need to make in your own personal life, and just keep moving forward. That's it, you know, one step ahead, three steps back.
Let it out with Katie. Let it out with Katie Dalebout, enthusiast and curator of people and ideas you need to hear.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast Let It Out, hosted by me, Katie Dalebout, and I am the author of the book by the same name. So thank you so much for listening to my podcast and being back here again. If you're a long-time listener, and if you're new, welcome. So you just heard a quote by one of two of today's guests. I have on the host, the co-host with the most from the podcast Laugh or Go Crazy, Steve and Michelle, on my show today. And we have a delightful conversation. I think it will definitely leave you uplifted and happier than it found you, hopefully. That was the case for me. I just re-listened to it. We talk about so many things, from manifesting to intuition to starting a podcast, and their process of becoming friends and starting a podcast is really such a beautiful story. It's one of my favorite things ever. So we talk a lot about friendship. Michelle is a mother, and both Steve and Michelle are grade school teachers, so we talk about having multiple passions, and it's just a really fantastic conversation. Like I said, Michelle is a mother, so we talk a little bit about motherhood, and we get into just a bunch of really great topics. So I think you will enjoy the conversation as much as I do, and I'm going to get right on into that. Not much to plug this week other than if you find value in the show, if it makes you feel less alone, if you find it interesting, if it keeps you company on your commute, it would be so great if you could give the show some love. So giving it a high five by subscribing on your phone, or leaving a review and sharing it with a friend. That's awesome. You can also donate to the show, which is fabulous, and you can do that on my website. And now let's get into my conversation with Steve and Michelle, the co-hosts of the Laugh or Go Crazy podcast. I know you guys will love them. I actually got to meet them in person. They came to my New York City book launch party the day my book came out, and they were delightful. They were the life of the party, and they're the life of this podcast, and they're going to be the life of your day. So let's get into it. Join the listener Facebook group on Facebook if you want to chat about it. And I will talk to you guys next week. Actually, I will talk to you at the end of this episode, because I want to get you excited about who's coming up on the show next week. So make sure you stick around to the end of this episode. Welcome back, everyone, to the show. I'm super psyched about today's episode. I have some inspiration and some comedy, which is the perfect combination, I think. And the two people on the podcast today, not one guest, but two, I have Steve and Michelle of the podcast Laugh or Go Crazy, which, like I said, brings together inspiration and comedy, which, again, I think is the perfect combination. And I talk a lot about on the show here. So their podcast has over 3 million downloads, and now they're here in Wonderland to get to know, for me to get to know them and for us to hang out. So thank you guys both so much for being here.
Oh, thanks, Katie. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, tell me a little bit about yourselves, both of you. How did you guys meet and come together? You seem like you're really close friends. And then how did the idea to start a podcast come to be? And I know you guys started the podcast a bunch of years ago when podcasts were kind of just getting started. So I'd love if you could talk me through your friendship and then your idea to start the podcast.
Yeah, actually, Michelle has been a stalker of mine for a very long time. And so, the only way I could get rid of her is to actually start a show with her.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
No, Michelle, why don't you fill Katie in for a little bit?
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So Steve and I are both teachers, and we taught together for many years. And at the beginning of our teaching careers, we taught in the same building, but we were not friends. We were friendly coworkers. And what happened was, as years passed, we ended up on the same grade level, and we had a mutual friend who we both were very close with and adored. And she passed from cystic fibrosis. And in her passing, Steve and I became really, really great friends. We, I think, in our mourning, we just kind of took to each other, and we would have endless conversations and spent a lot of time together. Um, Also, like putting together a memorial for her, and we had a walk for her and all different things. So we just really connected in a way that was really different, right, Steve?
Yeah, when we were going through that, Katie, we had this. We always knew each other. When you work with a colleague, you
Yeah.
kind of say hi bye. You're not necessarily friends. You're just friendly. And so, like Michelle was saying, we were really close. I've had some of the best times of my life with Jen. And she was just such an inspiration for me and her students. She was also a teacher, and also for Michelle. And when she passed, it was, even though she had cystic fibrosis, it was still sudden for us, and we were so taken back and surprised that Michelle and I decided to, do the memorial and all this. And we became very close, and it was as if she was pushing us together and having us not mourn but laugh. Like, we laughed almost every day. I mean, you couldn't separate us. And we would just get together, and we were like, we would tell stories about Jen, and we would it evolved over time into, hey, why don't we get voice recorders? Let's go on, let's go to Radio Shack. Now Radio Shack's not even in business. Let's go into Radio Shack and get 2 voice recorders. And we could tell Jen stories on the voice recorders. And so that's what we started to do, at night. I lived way out on the east end of Long Island, and Michelle lived further up the island. And we would record great stories about Jen, and we would swap recorders at the end of the school day. And we'd meet in the parking lot.
Oh, that's so cute.
And yeah, it was really cute. And we would say, you're going to love the story about Jen tonight. And, she's like, oh, I can't wait to hear it. And Michelle would respond on her recorder about my story. And I would respond on my recorder about her story about Jen. And then over time, we really were both going through some things at the time. And we started to tell personal stories about our lives. And we really got to know each other, honestly, not in person, but we got to know each other through these voice recorders.
That's so cool, like pen pals, but
Like
without the
Yeah,
pen.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
So-
The school day doesn't allow for you to talk all that much. So we had maybe 20 minutes at lunchtime, and maybe before the kids came in, or right after school for a few minutes. So we just didn't have enough time to talk. So this was like the next best thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we just learned so much about each other. And when you're talking and telling a story and no one is responding right away, it allows for like a really full story, and your response is very detailed, and you really listen carefully. So it's just that was a magical time in and of itself, and that was before Laugh or Go Crazy. So this was all leading up to what we started.
So Michelle, I got to tell you this one funny story. So we have many, many hours of recordings. Michelle's childhood and all the things she's gone through, and my childhood, and
when you were passing back
Yes.
and forth the recorders, you started to go into that stuff.
Yes, we started to go into really deep things.
Yeah.
And it's like we talk about those things all the time now.
I was just talking about this on the last podcast I was recording about with deep soul friendships. I think vulnerability is so crucial by one person, and then when one person's vulnerable and shares something intimate, it opens the door for the other person to as well, and then go even deeper as they go deeper, and vice versa. And so it sounds like that's really how your friendship began.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a safe place too, Katie. You're not telling these deep, dark secrets. You think that you're the only one that goes through these things,
Right.
And it was a safe place to do it. It was no judgment. You're not really looking at anybody. You're talking into a recorder at night alone. And it was a therapy, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And then when we listened, like you feel that sigh of relief, like, oh, so this is okay. It is okay that I told that story, and wow, I kind of like the response that I got, and wow, that's really helpful. And we were like helping each other.
Yeah. It's cathartic and it's therapy, just like you said.
so Michelle goes on vacation with her kids. This is in April. I'll never forget it. And I'm like, these recorders, it's, because sometimes I would forget my recorder and she would get mad at me. And sometimes she forgot to do the batteries in the record, so we had like logistical problems eventually, over time. And I think this is all meant to be. So I said, Michelle's never going to let me put this on my blog. I just kind of like started a blog. I said, how do I blog? I don't even know. Now everybody blogs, but I had no idea 4 years ago. So I Googled how to blog. And I had just seen Julie and Julia. Remember that show?
Yeah. Movie.
Yeah, the movie. Sorry. And so I start this blog. I name it "Laugh or Go Crazy," which is a story in itself. That name came from my childhood. And I put up some of the stories from the voice recorders. And so Michelle comes back from vacation. I say, I need you to go to this web address, and listen. And so she did. And I think she had a little bit of a, I don't know. Were you mad, Michelle?
I don't. I was. It took me many years to get comfortable being, on, not on air, but sort of on air. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just, sharing your life, your stories, with other people, and I was, it was hard for me.
Yeah, and we were very private about it. Like, we didn't advertise, we didn't socially promote. It was really just for Michelle and I to communicate easily. And all of a sudden, we see our numbers go up. We're like, wait a minute, did you listen? Because there's like 17 people that listened. And we're like, no.
So at this point, is it a podcast?
Well, no, we didn't know what it was. It wasn't a show. There was no show.
But it was on iTunes?
It wasn't even on iTunes.
Oh, okay. Just on your blog.
It was just on our blog. We had no idea about iTunes, like how to do it officially. And so we kind of fell into this, honestly. And over time, the numbers started to grow on the Podbean site, which is Podbean is it's like a podcast hosting site. And I think they were just starting at the time. And it was free and it was quick and easy. And our numbers started to grow.
Well, we also got to the point where we were recording our conversations instead. We were cutting out time at night and talking and then just posting conversations. Like Steve brought me to that point. Somehow we got there. And then it just took off on its own, really.
We started to get listener emails, and I said, Michelle, we got to get an email account, And we really have been evolving over time by people wanting more. It wasn't really driven... it wasn't goal oriented, like we're going to start a business and we're going to have this show and we're going to have people listen. It really wasn't that. It was more organic, and people started to contact us saying, you should do a regular thing, a show. And then we put it on iTunes, and it really kind of took off.
Yeah.
Now we do it once a week, and it's always at night, very late at night. And I'm in my little office, and Michelle's in her living room, and it's, candles on. It's a very sacred time. Everyone's in bed. We light the candles, and we just start. And it's really a beautiful time. And honestly, we were just talking about this. We did a show this week on Thursday, and we were saying, it really is about us. I mean, it really helps us, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it is therapy still to this day, and I like to think Michelle and I have evolved and become more aligned and balanced and everything. And we don't try to be anything that we're not. We're certainly not a guru, but we're living our best life. We're taking our ordinary and trying to become extraordinary people.
Yeah.
And Michelle helps me, and I'm helping her, and I think through that we're helping the audience as well.
Yeah, and I think you have so much integrity that you haven't lost, the roots where it's about doing something that makes you feel really awesome. And one of my favorite authors, Elizabeth Gilbert, wrote a new book-ish recently and last year called Big Magic. I'm sure you both would really enjoy it if you haven't read it already, but it's all about creativity and inspiration. And they speak a lot in there about how when you make things for other people, it's not as effective as if you make things that you wished existed and that make you happy to create. And if other people like them too, great, awesome. That's like a cool side effect. But usually that doesn't really happen unless you're creating something that is fun and inspiring and joyful for you to create and make. And there's actually this great David Bowie quote I posted last week about this exact piece of work. I'll try to find it right now and read it. But basically, it just really reminds me of what you guys were saying with this, which is that you did something that was so enjoyable and fun for you. And as a nice byproduct, it happened to help a lot of other people, and other people have found joy from it as well. But you've never lost sight of your immediate goal, which was this connection between you two.
Right, I agree. That's exactly.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's what's so important and often gets lost, unfortunately.
We've talked about that many times, Steve and I, and we just feel so grateful that we have people, emailing us, messaging us on a regular basis, just connecting and saying, when I listened to your True North podcast, I really connected. And, most of the time they're very thankful, which is so nice to hear. But they also share with us like the connection that they made and what they're doing and how they're growing in their life. And it is such a beautiful thing for Steve and I to connect with other people and to know that, wow, Steve and I had this great conversation, and through our conversation, someone else made a change in their life for the positive, and they're growing and they're feeling good. And it's such a gift. Like, we feel so grateful that what started out as just something between Steve and I, which it still is between Steve and I, and I think that's the beauty of it, because it's still about us, and everyone else as well, but the core is still, at its basic, like you basically said, and a lot of times people get lost, and thankfully we're not.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and someone had just recently wrote a blog about our True North episode. It's on our Facebook. And, she said it very, very true and very funny. She said, I love Steve and Michelle because they are inspirational, ordinary people who drink, who get mad at each other, whose furnace breaks, who, the
messiness of life.
The messiness of life. And it's not like we promote it, but we don't hide it. Like when we go on, sometimes I really get, it's funny. There was 2 years ago where I went through a period of being very annoyed with Michelle. She wasn't giving me what I needed. And whatever. But I started to come up with topics on this show that were indirectly about her.
You love this? See what I have to deal with, Katie?
Yeah.
I mean,
tonight's episode is How Friends Let You Down, Needed You Most. Michelle, what do you think about that?
That's so funny. Sort of passive aggressive, but really
that's
funny.
Exactly what I told him. Passive aggressive.
Totally passive aggressive. And the messiness of life. After you're in a relationship, you're married, or you're friends, and you're doing a show together. It's impossible to stay totally blissfully happy all the time, and sometimes, obviously people annoy you. And so we had, so it's the messiness of the relationship. And I really feel like we have a great relationship. But that was funny those days because, at the end of the podcast, Michelle was like, wait a minute, is this about me? So, if you want to, your listeners or whoever want to listen to some episodes from the past, those are, you might pick up some passive aggressive behaviors on my end.
That's so funny. I found the David Bowie quote that I was telling you guys about that really speaks to the point of, do something for you and then other people hopefully will enjoy it. And he says, all my big mistakes are when I try to second guess or please an audience. My work is always stronger when I get very selfish about it. And I really loved that. Yeah, and I think that really speaks to what you guys do with the podcast, so I had to share that.
Well, that is nice.
Yeah. So speaking of, how it's evolved over the years, and how do you think people mostly find the show and have gotten to it, and what's some of the feedback that you've gotten about it? And let's start there. I have a bunch more questions, but let's start there.
Well, we get a lot of emails and messages through Facebook, and we actually also have like a PO box, and people write us beautiful long letters. So a lot of communication is written. Some people actually send us audio messages, which is really cool too.
Oh, fun.
And yeah, and like I said before, a lot of people are really grateful and thankful that they have the podcast because for some reason they found us, and sometimes it's by accident, whether they found us on iTunes or they were Googling something and we came up, uh, and they happen to pick an episode that they connect to, and they just share that with us, right? Don't you find that, Steve? A lot of people are doing that. More recently, we're noticing that people are requesting topics.
They
They're contacting us with some questions, and I have this going on. I don't remember you speaking to this. Do you think maybe you can bring it up? And so we're kind of turning in different directions too.
And we have listeners that actually record their voice and do a voice recording to us. And we have one guy upstate who runs. He's because I run, and so he related to me the fact that I find my balance and my peace through running and being outdoors and nature. And so he's a big runner, and so when he contacts us, he runs and talks.
Cool.
You kind of have to get over the heavy breathing, but but he does do these long half-hour voicemails through our Laugh or Go Crazy at Yahoo account. And it's just so nice to actually hear the listeners and we've moved them and how it could just be a line, Katie, it could just be like a line or two that you say. That's the aha moment for somebody.
Right.
And sometimes we do a show, Michelle and I'm like, I don't know, was that good? Like, I'm not sure. I didn't really like that show.
And those are the favorites.
Those are the favorites. Yeah, I'm like, people are responding about, we did one called That's Life recently, and we talked about Meet Joe Black, the movie, and afterwards I'm like, I don't know, was that any good? Maybe we shouldn't even put it up. And then we did, and it turns out to be, it resonates with people. So
yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's just like not judging the work and just being real and showing up. And that's what I admire so much about you guys. Like, ever since I connected with you and met you, you are just two of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. Like, you had to reschedule and you called and you were so nice, and like you remembered that I was moving, and you guys just seemed so kind and down to earth. And I think that if you just show up as yourselves, it's impossible not to like you. I've experienced it myself. So I think your show is just you being real. And I think, unfortunately, I think when people are putting themselves out there, or in your case, as you grow, it's one thing to be real when it was just the two of you, but as the podcast grew to have many more listeners, it's really a skill that you guys stayed so authentic and true and who you actually are.
Yeah, well, thank you. That was so sweet. That was nice of you.
Yeah.
What's nice, Katie, is it's just natural. Like, it's not that's just, thankfully, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So it just is authentic, and if it wasn't, I don't think we could do it.
No, we would have been sick of each other by now.
Yeah. I lose interest fast, Katie.
Yeah.
No, we really do. Honestly, we both have ADD. I got to be honest. Officially, I was a kid with ADD. Very difficult element. And I had a horrible time in elementary school. And I'm an elementary school teacher, by the way. And
is that what you guys both teach?
Yes.
I teach 4th grade, and Michelle teaches 1st.
Nice.
And I would never have put myself, as a kid, saying I would be a teacher. And I love the job, and I was so inspired by my tennis coach, Fred, and I said, he's got the best life. The kids adore him. They want to be in his room on the periods that they have off. They want to be with him, and he has such a great connection, such a friendship, leadership, mentor connection with his kids, And I said, I want that. He was a runner. Now I'm a runner. He actually lived in my neighborhood. I said, what a beautiful neighborhood. I want to live in his neighborhood one day. And here I am. I live 3 blocks from him. It wasn't even intentional. It was the universe bringing what I always wanted to me.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's like you put in that order by admiring what he has, and then, unconsciously or probably partly consciously, when I always, tend to think, and I think you guys are of the same mindset, that thoughts become things, and having some clarity about the direction that you want to go in your life is really crucial. And he gave you that direction, and even subconsciously, it's such a cool story.
Yeah, Wayne Dyer, right? I mean, Michelle and I went to see him many years ago, and the thing that struck me the most, he was like, change the way you see things, and the things you see
Yeah,
will change.
I
Isn't
love
that?
that quote. Yeah, it's so
And
good.
and honestly, it's so true. It
So
really is.
true.
You can see things negatively. You can come from a place of scarcity, and you'll attract more of that.
Yep.
Or you can come from a place of love and abundance, and that's what you'll get.
Preach. I completely agree.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you that
So,
thought.
something I'm curious about, you guys, I want to know two things. How you guys both are into personal development and spirituality, and those topics, come up, I think, from time to time in your podcast, but in a very grounded way. And then also, you guys are both teachers, so I would love to know how each of you got into that sort of way of thinking and being. And then also, are you able to use what you've learned about life and personal growth and spirituality, and somehow bring that to the kids that you teach and work with?
Yeah, those are great questions. You know, Talking about what you just asked regarding bringing it to the kids, you know, I think in this world, we all can agree. I don't know if we all can agree, but Steve and I definitely agree that people should always be looking to help one another and being kind and being helpful and trying to bring people up. And I think these past few years, going through all of this with Steve and having this great podcast and learning so much, I think through like our daily life, we just try to lead in a positive way and model behavior for children that is what we would like to see in the world. And it's just like it's kindness, it's helpful, being helpful, pushing, trying to give kids a push when they need it, or a lending hand when they need it. Knowing what people need. The kids that I teach right now are young. I taught older kids for many years, but right now they're young, and there are very simple things. Like in my class, every day we take 5 minutes of quiet time, and we just sit and we stretch for a minute or two, and we sit for 5 minutes, and we just breathe and relax. I don't even call it anything. I just tell them that it's time to take a break. And really what I'm teaching them to do is meditate. I'm teaching them to take a break from the day, because we all deserve that. So, Steve does it in a different way because his kids are a little bit older, but we're always trying to model positive behavior and just the way that the world, should be. And that's really what we're trying to do here too, is just help one another.
I love
And
that.
yeah, and as far as the fourth graders, I used to teach fifth grade as well. We would make Zen rock piles, where you put the stone one on each other, and you try to, create balance within a landscape. And so what I would do once in a while was to say, look, you have no homework tonight. The only homework you have is to go outside, become quiet, take your mom's iPhone or your iPad, your iPhone Touch, take a picture of you building a Zen rock pile. Okay, I would show them examples of, ones on Google, and I said, look, it doesn't have to be a high one. It doesn't have to be, but it has to be yours, and it has to come from your quietness. And build one, take a picture of it, and have your parents email it to me. And I'll put it up on our smart board in the morning so that when you come in, I'll feature one a day.
Cool.
And kids loved it. And I had a very challenging class, Katie, that year. Very needy kids, very high-strung kids, like what I was in elementary school. I was a disaster. And if I had a teacher then that did that for me, I think I would have, you said, how did we get into this? I think I would have been on the spiritual, inspirational track at 10 rather than at, 38, and so they just loved it. And so they would come in so excited, Mr. Bell, I built a Zen rock pile and I want you to put it up on the smartboard. And really, honestly, we did the meditation every at the end of school. 5 minutes before the buses or 10 minutes before the buses, I'd shut the lights and I'd put the Pandora on with the Zen music, and we would just sort of be quiet and chill. And so that's actually a huge movement now in education, the mindfulness movement. And it's such a great thing because school districts are starting to train teachers on how to bring this into classrooms and introduce it to kids. So, I know some of the teachers in our school have been trained in it. We've been trained in it through conferences. And it's such a wonderful thing because kids are constantly going, they're constantly moving, they're never quiet. They're hooked into, all the social media, and they're always checking their phone and they're never present. And so we realized that, and that kind of spills over into the classroom.
And into adulthood.
Right. Could you imagine if we all, knew how to sit quietly and be present years ago? I mean, that's something I've worked on the last few years, and I'm still working on it because being in the present moment takes a lot of effort for me, and I have to be mindful. But as a child, if someone helped me along with that, at a young age, and that was just part of my lifestyle, I think there would be so much less illness, anxiety, stress, anger, because people are so wound up.
Oh my gosh, I know. The entire time I was just thinking, wow, I'm so jealous of the kids that you guys teach. I wish that I could be in your classes. That just sounds amazing. What an amazing homework assignment that you gave them, Steve. And then Michelle, to do that time, not calling it anything, but just allowing them that space. It's so fantastic. And I'm so grateful that you two are in the education system.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So how did you guys get into mindfulness and all of this stuff?
Well, I think when Steve and I started, we were doing a lot of reading. We know that you do a lot of reading, and you even write too, Katie. Is that right?
I do, yeah.
So when we started talking, and then we started the podcast, even before Steve, you had recommended books to me, and we read a lot too. We read a lot, and we just I don't know, we learned as we went along, didn't we?
I got to jump in. My first inspirational book was The Secret. Now, whether you want to call it, amazing reading or not, but one amazing story. Remember, Michelle, the Blue Marble story?
Oh, yes.
It came out of that book, and I was at my condo at the pool, and I was going through some medical things at the time, and I was just feeling sort of depressed. I wouldn't say officially depressed, but I thought I was depressed. And someone said, you should read The Secret and attract these things into your life. And it's not magic, but it's the universe. And I was like, what? The universe? I don't even know. What are you talking about? And so I picked up the book and I read it by the pool. It was July, right? I was on summer break. And I'm reading this book at the pool, and there was a part of the book where it says, all right, pick something small, visualize it, know it's coming, see the color, see the shape, pretend to feel it, really just expect it to show up in your life. And you'll see it will show up. Well, I said, okay, well, I'm going to test this because, really, I really don't believe it, A. And B, all right, I'll just do it because I'm laying here. And so I picked a very hard object. I picked a blue marble, but it had to be light baby blue with white swirls, and it couldn't be the size of a traditional marble. It needed to be a golf ball size. Because I wanted to make it very difficult for this thing to appear into my life, because I wanted to almost disprove it. Mm-hmm. And so, I visualized it. And in fact, I visualized it with a little kind of hole in it, like a little indentation. So anyway, that weekend I was going to Newport, and I gave myself a time limit, Sunday. When I come back on the ferry to Long Island, if I don't have it, then this book is nonsense, and whatever. I don't believe it. And so, the whole weekend passed, and nothing. I was like, oh God. And so people were like, well, what do why are you all depressed? And I was like, well, I read this book, and I was supposed to, visualize, and it was supposed to manifest, and nothing's happening, and so they're trying to make me feel better. And we're driving to Bridgeport, Connecticut, and we arrive a little early, to the ferry. So someone in the back seat says, let's go to Mystic, Connecticut, which is the exit before Bridgeport. And so I'm like, oh, all right. So I turn off in the exit, and I go to Mystic, Connecticut. And I'm like, we have about 40 minutes. So I get myself pizza because, Mystic Pizza. And and so everyone's shopping and having fun. And I'm like walking and moping. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm really depressed.
My marble didn't manifest.
Yeah, I'm annoyed at everybody. I'm annoyed at the universe. I'm annoyed at everybody. And so
You're losing your marbles.
Yeah, I'm losing my marbles. Exactly. So it's 5 minutes before we have to get back in the car to go to the ferry. And I see a store. That's a clothing store, by the way. And I see a pair of shoes I like, and I go in, and I quickly, and in the back of the store, they're kind of selling like, sun catchers and whatnot. And I see a jar of marbles. And I'm like, oh yes, marbles. So and the woman behind the counter is like, who is this crazy guy? I go to the marbles, and I'm frantically looking for a blue marble. Now, they're not the size that a golf ball, size. Okay, so I'm like, all right, maybe I asked too much. I just want a blue one, and I can call it a day. No blue ones. And I'm like, oh, God. And I walk out of the store, and the woman behind the counter says, Sir, can I help you? And I'm like, no, I was just looking for a marble. I wanted something a little larger. And she said, well, what about this one behind me on the shelf? And I look at it, Katie, and it was a golf ball sized baby blue with white swirls marble.
Oh my gosh.
One sitting on her shelf above the stereo speaker.
I love stories like this.
She says, do you want this one, sir? And just as I'm telling it now, chills run through my body, and I say, yes, that's the one I've been looking for. And I still have it. And you know what? I'm going to, in fact, I'll text it to you later.
Yeah.
I'll text you the picture of the blue marble that still today sits in my beach room.
I love stuff like that.
And from that moment on, I felt privileged to even be graced with this manifestation.
Yeah.
From that moment on, I've become a believer that we really think, ideas and thoughts become things.
Yeah. Oh, that is so cool. What a cool story. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no, thanks for listening.
Yeah, I have a similar story, I guess, to, I found The Secret. I didn't really get into spirituality and personal development as much until I hit a bottom in my own life, similar right after or during college, I guess. But in high school, I was preparing to take the ACT tests and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I went to some sort of one of those prep courses or something like that, but it wasn't actually that at all. It was just this woman at her house, and she tutored kids in it, because I think I either took a practice test or something, and I didn't do that great on it, and I was not the best test taker, and I don't know, it was just the first time I'd done it, right? And so I go to this woman's house, and she was just so cool. She was this older woman, and every time I'd come over, she'd have a snack for us, and usually it was fresh baked muffins or something really great, just it smelled really great in there. She'd play music, soft music, while we were studying. It was just, very enjoyable experience all around. So the night before I was taking the real test, she handed me this DVD, and she was like, watch this tonight and just trust me. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this from this lady? But I loved her, so I was like, whatever. And it was the DVD of The Secret. And I had done terrible on the practice exam, so I was pretty nervous for the next one. Or it wasn't a practice exam. It was like a real time that I took it, and I didn't do great on it, but it was the first time. And I, had tutored with her, and then I watched The Secret, and I like visualized doing well on the exam, and my score went up like 12 points or something, 10 or something points. It was like crazy and like unheard of to improve that much taking the test. But from then on, I was like, oh, maybe this stuff kind of works.
Yeah, it really does. And that, it's very hard to raise your score, by the way, that many points.
Right. Yeah. So I think I blame The Secret for that.
Yes. Now everyone's going to run out and get The Secret. I think it's a good book, especially to start with.
Yeah, it's a great intro book.
It's a good starter. And then from there, we read Eckhart Tolle. And honestly, Eckhart Tolle really revolutionized my thinking.
Yeah.
And I actually have my original copy, The New Earth. And it was when Oprah was doing her
book club.
Yeah, she was doing the book club, but also the video class.
Oh, nice.
And I signed up for the 12-week video class. And every Monday night at 9:00, she had her, Eckhart, and I was there. And they would review the chapter, and they would talk about it, and we'd highlight it, and I would take notes. And I was really a student of that book. During that time. And then from there, I went on to Wayne Dyer and read his books and his audio tapes. And so that's how it kind of started for me. And
that's really cool. And during that entire process, were the two of you kind of doing this together and doing this alongside the podcast and talking about the things together?
Yeah, Michelle, right? We would be reading The New Earth together and talking about it.
Yes. Yeah, we did do that. I think you had read it first. You read it again with me.
I was always like Kramer from Seinfeld. I would go into her room. She would be right next door, and I'd be like, "You got to hear this. You got to hear this, chapter 4." And she's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "No, Michelle, you got to really hear this." And I would have parts highlighted, and it really was a comedy sitcom situation.
I'd be like, "Well, I don't like." He buys me the book. Okay, so now I have the book. I'm like, "Well, I don't really like to write in the book." You're going to write in the book. You have to write in the book. I want you to have a highlighter. He bought me a highlighter.
I love you guys.
Right? I'm like, well, if anyone wants to borrow the book, they have all my notes. This isn't the book for anybody else. This is a book for you.
And also, we read The Shack. Remember The Shack?
Oh, The Shack. That was another great
one.
story.
Oh, you have to read The Shack.
Yeah.
Oh, The Shack is great.
We've had so much fun, Katie, over the past few years. Yeah. And that's a big part of it, too. You have to enjoy the people you're with. You have to trust people. You have to enjoy them. And that's what good relationships are.
Yeah.
So we just have a lot of fun. We really do.
Yeah, and I love that you don't take yourselves too seriously. I know something that I struggled with and I talk about often on the show is that I transferred my addictions, right? So like I came to this work through my eating disorder, and then I got so into personal growth and so into spirituality that I was using it as everything and judging myself from not doing it perfectly and using it as spiritual entertainment that I was like shut off to everything else. And then in recent years, like the last year, I was like, wait, I need to be a more well-rounded person and enjoy entertainment and comedy and other things and have, enjoy life as a whole being really beautiful, not just this one personal growth area of life, and which is important and I still love very much. But I think that's what's so great about you guys and through your show and what you say right in your tagline, which I mentioned at the top of the show about inspiration and comedy and that intersection. And I love that about you guys. And so what advice do you have for staying really grounded and not taking yourselves too seriously?
Good question.
Yeah, that is good. You want to go first, Steve?
Okay, well, comedy has saved my life in many ways. Comedy has gotten me out of fights in high school. Comedy has brought me to a place where I could accept the childhood I had. It's a very difficult childhood. And I've lost my father at a very early age. I've lost best friends. And so comedy has been my partner through this whole journey of life for me. And so, I don't know, it's not advice, but I think if you can tap into the levity and the lightness of yourself and And to laugh at yourself is so important. It's so cathartic that that is what's gotten me through all the things that in my life. So, I think that, I almost feel lucky to have that side of, that comedic side, maybe a little too much, but for me, that's my own personal relationship with comedy. And, when I was listening to some of the other spiritual gurus, I almost felt worse about myself because I couldn't obtain the level of balance and optimism, and it was very hard for me. And I would sometimes read something or listen to a passage on a CD, and I was like, that's just not me. I'm not even there yet, and I would feel worse. And they would never laugh, and they would never joke, and I was like, well, if I were doing this, I would just kind of laugh a little bit and say, hey, I took 3 steps back today. You know what I mean? I took 3 steps back, 1 step forward, 3 steps back. But you know what? Wayne Dyer had said it great. You either catch yourself after you do it and say it, you catch yourself while you're doing it, and then when you get to the point where you can catch yourself before you say it and do it.
That's so good.
And so for many, many, many years, I would catch myself after. And then as I'm saying what I shouldn't say, I'm realizing I shouldn't be saying it. And now I'm finally at the point where I kind of catch myself before I say it or do it. So that's my experience with the whole comedy, spirituality intersection.
That was amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I hadn't heard that one from Wayne Dyer, but I really, really like that.
Yeah, that was in one of his audiobooks. And Michelle's a very funny girl. I mean, honestly, many people say we're like Howard Stern and Robin Givens.
Yeah.
We are. It really. I couldn't do this without. I mean, it would be
a great dynamic.
Honestly, I would sit here alone. I'm like, what am I going to talk about? But with her, I don't know. It's even though I may open the show, even though I may have more of the lineup, she really brings a perspective to the show, and she makes me laugh. And not many people can make me laugh. I mean, I can make almost anyone laugh, but you ask the great comedics, like Seinfeld or whoever.
Yeah.
They're a tough audience. They may be able to make people laugh, but it's very hard for you to laugh at other people. And so she makes me laugh every night that we go on.
That's amazing.
So
you guys are so cool. I just want to hang out with you all the time.
Thanks. I know we have a lot of fun, and as for just giving other people advice, I agree with everything Steve said, and we are all like playing this game of life together, and I think that we have to give ourselves a break and say, you know what, we have good days, we have bad days, we make mistakes, we do great things, like just accept it all, whatever it is, and move forward and make the changes that you feel you need to make in your own personal life, and just keep moving forward. That's it, 1 step ahead, 3 steps back. How many times, Steve, have we spoken and he's like, what happened? I'm like, everything's a mess. And then like 2 days later, I'm like, right, I'm back on track. That's life. That's the real world. All of, we look at these famous people, these actors, musicians. They're people just like you and I. They're no different. They have a beautiful talent, but they have feelings like us. They may have more material things, but that's not what brings us happiness. Friendship brings us happiness. Relationships, laughter, just get back to the basics.
No, I agree. The basics, go back to the basics. That's going to be the title of our next show. We just got it, back to basics.
Yeah.
You just inspired our next topic.
Woo woo, love it.
Well, wow. I mean, you're definitely coming on our show.
Yeah, wait.
Oh, yes. We got plans for you, Katie.
Yay.
That will be a lot of fun.
I can't wait. I hope that we stay friends forever.
Yes.
Yeah, and
start of lots of friendship and collaboration, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular genre, we may meet a lot of people, we may know a lot of people, but how many people do we really connect with? So that's why I wanted, we haven't reached out to many people. And so we were looking, and I said, I really like your website. I really liked your the titles of your shows and how many different people you interview. and I listened, and I like the fact that when you interview somebody, you really are listening, and it's not about you, it's about them. And I love that, because it's a really great talent to be an interviewer and bring out the best in your guests. And so I actually listened to one recent one. I think it was Jordan Bach. You guys were friends, and I did listen to that on the way to Manhattan on a train. And I was, because I wanted to listen to your latest.
Aww.
And I think your show is great. And I really hope we stay friends, because it's, you don't want to say it's very rare to meet people, but when you do meet someone that you connect with, you have to stay in touch.
Oh, I completely feel the same way. And I get a lot of email. When I started, there was like 3 people listening to the show. And then I was just so grateful that people said yes to coming on the show. And then as I've, been so fortunate to grow, I get quite a few emails from PR people or people who are coaches or writers or speakers who want to promote their work to my platform that I have. And it's such an honor. And I used to just be like, yes to every single one of them, because I was like, cool, somebody wants to come on the show. Yay, that's crazy, But now the volume of those is so many, I can't say yes to them all. And even if I do say yes to one that I'm not thrilled about, unfortunately, like, it won't be a great episode because I'm not excited to speak with the person, and I might not vibe with them. Plus, the listeners trust me as a curator to bring them really diverse content, but also, something that I enjoy. That's the through line through it all. And that's, when I found you guys, immediately I felt the same way. Like, you guys are so cool and sweet, and I was so excited to connect with you. So we just have a mutual love for each other.
We have an official love fest going.
Yeah, totally. We just had to share that. So I think
be great.
Yeah, totally. So I think that we should wrap with my fun questions that I ask everyone. What do you guys think?
Oh, that's great.
All right. So what do your mornings look like? What are the first few things you do or think when you wake up in the morning, and how do those choices you make in the morning affect how the rest of your day goes?
Oh boy. Well, in my house, when I get up in the morning, I'm like, I hope this is a peaceful morning. I hope everyone will just get up and get ready and get out of the house without any arguing, because I have 2 young boys, and we get up early, and I that's how I start. I get up first, I take a deep breath, and I'm very like a quiet morning person, so I love when it's quiet in the morning, but children aren't quiet, so I kind of prepare myself for that. It's not very uplifting, but it's honest.
I love that. And actually, before we move on to you, Steve, Michelle, we have a lot of mothers listening to the show, and I recently got some feedback that I never really ask enough questions about motherhood because I'm not a mother myself. So could you speak a little bit about motherhood? And I know that's a huge question, but just in the sense of, organizing yourself and allowing yourself to be able to do creative projects like the one that you do with Steve.
Well, you know what, Katie? That's a really great question, and it's not easy to do that. So many women struggle with this, and Steve knows this really well because 6 years ago, I didn't even know who I was, what I liked. The kids were really young, and I was working full time, and it was like just daily management. Getting everyone up and out where they need to be, getting home, eat. It was very robotic. It was very, I had to really learn how to manage my time and to realize that if I don't take time for myself, I'm not useful or helpful to anyone. You really have to not forget that you're a mother, but you're a person. And it's important for your kids to see that too. And, Steve has been extremely accommodating over the years because we record at like 9:30 at night because the kids go to bed and my husband goes to work early, so he goes to bed. So fortunately, my partner here works with me, and that's how we get to do this, really. Now I'm at the point where we're both at the point, where we I have to carve more time out of my day, and it's just things are different. But it's hard to be a mother and balance everything and to keep your own identity. without feeling guilty. There's a big guilt factor being a parent, especially for some reason mothers. I feel like, history has been that the male works and they're kind of okay with that. Women are still have a hard time with juggling everything. It's a lot. There's a lot to juggle.
Yeah.
And, I started to do things like Peapod. And all right, I paid the extra $7 delivery, but maybe I didn't buy a few of the extra things I would have bought, but I had food delivered. Like I tried to really start to help myself.
It's so good.
Yeah, because you have to. You really have to. And I'm a better mother now. I take time for myself. My kids see that I take time for myself. I try to treat myself well and I hope that they'll treat themselves well.
Yeah.
You want to like yourself. If you don't like yourself, who else is going to like you? You live with yourself all day, every day. You can't escape yourself. So you have to create the type of person that you like.
Yeah.
And it's hard,
And
but
you're setting an example for your kids.
yeah, and Steve always would remind me of that. He's like, Michelle, it's important for your boys to see that you have friendships and you go out and you laugh and you have fun and you
Yep.
want to go out. Like, as I would see it, like, oh, I'm going to leave them. We work all week and then I realized that, like, he's right. That's true. Like, that's important too. It's important I go to the gym. It's important that they see that I exercise.
Yeah.
All of those things are important.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's better for them to have you around when you're happy and fulfilled creatively and holistically in all the areas of your life than to just have you around but not taking care of yourself, and because maybe even subconsciously you'll resent that and them even, and they'll feel that. So I'm so glad I asked you. Everything you shared was so valuable and really, really, I think will help a lot of people.
Oh, I hope so.
So Steve, what are some things you do in the morning when you open your eyes and start your day, and how does that affect how the rest of your day goes?
Well, I just want to start with Michelle's a great mom, by the way. I mean, she really is a terrific mother.
The best.
And, yeah, she really
I can
is.
already tell.
Yeah, and I agree with the whole, if you're centered and balanced, then everything around you is just going to run much better. For me, I'm much more of a morning person than a night person. I don't love the evenings and the nights. I love the mornings. And so for me, it starts with, getting up, letting Miles out, my dog, making coffee. I'm usually up very early. And then kind of, if it's a work day, I try to carve out more than five. I try to carve out about 30 minutes of me time, because I don't have kids. And so I try to balance and focus myself. I usually go on the porch and my sprinklers are on at that point. My sprinklers go on at 4:30 in the morning. And so I just sit in the rocking chair on my porch and just watch this. It sounds kind of silly. People probably think I'm crazy, but I'm just watching the sprinklers. And if I'm not doing that, I'm taking a garden tour. I'm very big into gardening. Cool. So I'll just take my coffee and I'll walk around the property. I'll walk around in the backyard and I'll go to the fire pit and sit on the Adirondack chair and look at what's blooming and what's coming up.
Your yard sounds beautiful.
Yeah, the yard is very nice. And I try to carve out me time, even if it's during the week work hustle. And obviously, if it's in the summer, I have a lot more me time. But, we're just talking sort of the routines of working. And then I'm okay with the 8 hours of work because I had a little of that time. Maybe I'll sneak a run in, right before the shower. And it's very important. If it's 5 minutes, if it's 30 minutes, if it's an hour, whatever your schedule can accommodate, I think it's very important to have that time.
Yeah.
And, to just be present. So that's my routine in the morning. Coffee, porch, garden tour, and the sprinklers is very big in my house.
I love that. So what about in the evenings, other than when you guys record the show, what are some evening rituals you have, or the last few things you do to wind down or relax or shut down from a busy day?
Michelle, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question because every night in my house is a little different.
Right.
Katie, I took up some hobbies and I do try a few times a week when everyone goes to bed to I like to crochet. So I'll work on a little project that I'm doing. And
Nice.
if I'm not working with Steve on the show, I'll try to carve in some time for that. I like to read. I'm into the essential oils, so sometimes I'll read up on something that I'm interested in, and then I'll play with my oils a little bit. I try to take a little bit of time to just decompress and do something that I like. But honestly, many times I'm doing laundry or I'm just cleaning up, and then I go to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
nighttime rituals, I don't necessarily have, and that's one area I would like to improve on, honestly. I have my morning rituals, but the nighttime rituals I don't necessarily have.
We have one, which is recording the show.
Yes, oh, that's
Yes.
why I love it so much. Yeah,
But you know what's one thing, and I want to say this out loud so that hopefully it resonates in my own mind and I do it. I
Mm-hmm.
really want to make an effort to meditate daily, like really meditate at home daily. We do it at school for a little bit, but like just quiet down. But I heard and read so much about meditating and the benefits. I would love to incorporate that into my nightly routine. So, you know what,
Yeah.
Katie? Maybe you just turn me on to that.
right.
Yeah. Do you guys know about TM, Transcendental Meditation?
No.
It's a really cool practice. Look up the David Lynch Foundation. It's like the type of meditation that Jerry Seinfeld does, and a bunch of celebrities do it. And it's really simple: 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, and you get trained one on one with someone. And there's people all over the world. I'm sure there's lots of people in New York, but I actually had the like founder of the David Lynch Foundation on the podcast, but he actually gifted me getting trained with meditation, and I recently learned it, and I really love it. It's a great way to calm your nervous system, and the stress relieving benefits of it are really, really insane because we don't get enough rest just by sleeping, and this is a way for your body to actually like deeply rest and your nervous system to rest. So I don't know. I'll send you guys some info on it because it's really helped me.
Oh, I would love that. I would,
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
yeah,
Yeah, it's nice.
I could use that. I believe yeah, Howard Stern does that because I listen to him in the car, and he does.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
swears by that.
Yeah, a lot of famous people do, a lot of non-famous people do.
Right.
It's really really effective. I really enjoy it a lot. So okay, another big question for you guys. What do you think happens when we die? Huge
Oh wow,
question.
that's a good one. Yeah, that's a huge question. Do you want to go first, Steve? Oh,
Well,
I'll go.
yeah.
I'm hopeful that when we pass, that we are then with all of our loved ones that passed. I believe that Earth. This is just my belief, I mean, sometimes your beliefs change, so I won't hold myself to this belief for the rest of my life. But I've had it up until 42. Um, I believe that I'm hoping that when we pass, that we meet up with all of our loved ones, and that we are then in a state of just peace. This earth, the world that we live in, and our lives are full of ups and downs, great times, bad, hard times, maybe just coasting on a steady plane for a while. But we have a lot to deal with here on Earth, and it's a beautiful place, and we're making it the best that we can. Hopefully, most of us are. But I believe when we pass, we don't have any of the difficulties that we have. I feel like that's our home. Like we come to learn something, and hopefully we do, and hopefully we make a really positive impact in the world and make the world a better place. And then we go back to like our peaceful place, like back home, you know?
Yeah, I love that. That's an
I mean, I
amazing
hope so.
answer.
That's what I hope so.
I hope
Yeah.
so too.
I piggyback on that thought too. And, we're all energy, and energy doesn't die. It transforms, and perhaps into a new state or place. But I really believe in my heart that this is the hardest that we'll have it on this earth. Like Michelle, if you could find peace on earth, even within your own body and mind, then really you're heaven on earth. And
Yeah.
I think that whatever happens after will be so much better. So I think we have to learn the lessons we need to learn. We have to go through the struggles, and we become evolved, and maybe move on to another phase.
Yeah.
But
I
I
agree.
believe it doesn't end. That
I
I know.
agree.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay, so here's another fun one. You each are trapped on a deserted island, and you can bring with you one TV show to binge watch, one movie, one book, and one food. What would each of you bring?
Oh my goodness.
TV, movie, food.
And book.
Oh, and book.
TV, movie, food, and book. Oh gosh.
Katie, you're like
All right. This is tough. All right. So
Ann
food,
Sawyer over there. Wait. Okay.
um,
You go first, Michelle.
okay. All right. Food, I'll say pizza. It has to be pizza.
Yeah, everybody
I would
says
say
pizza.
pizza because I always love pizza. That's a consistent thing that I could
You
probably
wouldn't
eat
get
all the
sick of
time.
it. Yep.
Yeah. The a book. Oh gosh, that's a hard one. I think it sounds so silly, but if I could pick an author, I read a few of this author's books. It's just a fiction book, but Billy Letts, he writes books. Actually, it's so funny, Billy. I don't know if it's a female or a male, but I just over the years have enjoyed the books. I'm trying to think of the names, like The Honk and the Holler Inn, Where the Heart Is, just books from down south, like kind of like a Fried Green Tomatoes. I think that's the book, the movie that I'd bring.
Yeah.
I find peace in that, in like down south, or that type of
I love
lifestyle.
that book, Fried Green Tomatoes.
Yeah, that was such a great book and a great movie as
Yeah.
well. And, oh my gosh, food, movie, I don't know. Movie, book, that's a tough one. And the TV, I don't watch that much TV, but I like, I would bring like Cheers or like Friends,
Yeah.
half hour
Friends,
comedy.
classic. Yeah.
Yeah, just classic or something like that.
Friends would be a good one too because there's 10 seasons.
Right, exactly.
Oh, that would keep
Exactly.
you busy,
A lot
right?
of characters.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd feel like you have some friends. Nice. What
Right.
about you, Steve?
I'm thinking definitely the movie. There's two, so I'm going to just mention.
Okay.
I love Moonstruck.
Oh yeah, does that with Cher?
Cher. It takes place in Brooklyn Heights.
I need to
Terrific.
watch that. I don't think I've ever seen it.
Oh, you have to. That has to be a DVD that you put in when you're feeling down or you
Oh,
need it.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a classic. I also like Something's Got to Give.
Oh, I love that movie.
It just makes me feel good
Yeah,
when
I
I.
need to rewatch that.
So those two DVDs definitely. Um, I've been binge watching. Listen, it's not Cheers, but I've been watching a lot of Flipping Out by Jeff Lewis a lot, lately. You watch that on
No.
Bravo? Oh yeah, I don't watch very good things. It's where he fix up. I like remodeling.
Oh yeah, I love that. So I don't have a TV, but like I on Netflix they have some. I recently got Netflix sort of, and I like the HGTV show. Like I really like the House Hunters one,
Right.
and I'll have to. My mom watches a lot of Bravo. I'll have to watch it when I go home and visit at some point.
That's a good one. The Flipping Out is good because him and Jeff and his assistant, they're always getting into trouble and they're always, arguing and it's just a very fun, banterish kind of show. But you get the whole addiction of the housing, like the remodeling. Takes place in California. So I've been watching that a lot.
Cool. And then
And
food.
food, I'm going lasagna.
Nice. You guys
Yeah.
have a nice little Italian theme. Maybe you'll be
Yeah.
on an Italian island.
Right. Because you don't have to heat it up. I love it cold. So I'm gonna have a nice wedge of
Solid.
yeah. And
Book.
book. Ooh, book. Let me see what book. I probably would bring some sort of inspirational spiritual book. So I have to look on my library. Probably one of the Wayne Dyers that I have. Something Intentions. I forget the name of it. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, something right?
Oh,
Intentions.
it's gonna bug me. The Power of It. No.
Yeah, the power of intention. I think
Is
that's
that?
what it is.
Or are we thinking of The Power of Now? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna Google it, but something like that because I'm going to probably need it
Yeah,
on the island,
for
and
sure.
so that's what I would do.
Yeah, so good.
Oh, it is the power of intentions.
Oh,
You're right.
good. All right, cool.
Absolutely
Yeah, I think I listened to that on audiobook. Yeah.
right.
Cool. All right, you guys, this was so much fun. Thank you so much again for being here. I just want to honor you before I ask you my final question that I ask everyone. So, thank you again so much for being here, and I'm glad we've become friends. I'm so grateful for this podcast for introducing me to it's really a great networking tool. I've met some of the best friends ever through the podcast actually.
Mhm.
So, I'm so glad to add you guys to that. So, thank
Pleasure.
you.
Sure. Thank you.
And as you know, the name of the podcast is The Wellness Wonderland. So when I offer that term to you to live in a wellness wonderland, what comes up? What does that mean to you guys?
Well, to me, wellness wonderland is like encompasses every part of you. So like wellness, body, spirit, soul, everything. And just taking good care of yourself and keeping yourself like as healthy as you can in every way.
Right. Body, mind, spirit. That's wellness wonderland to me. Absolutely. You can't have one. I mean, you can't just be all about the gym, all about the physical, all about how you look and eating right. You can't just be that. It has to be the three: mind, body, spirit.
Triple
That's
threat.
triple exactly. That's what it is for me.
Yeah,
So,
completely agree. Thank you guys so much.
thank you, Katie. And
Yeah, thanks for having us, Katie. And hopefully you will be on Laugh or Go Crazy real soon.
All right, you guys, there you have it. My episode with Steve and Michelle. Aren't they delightful? They are nice, kind people, and I'm so glad they came on the show. Next week, get excited. We're going to be talking about our relationships with our mothers. I have Bethany Webster from Womb of Light. She has this blog that I'll talk about this, I'm sure, in the intro of next week's episode after I re-listen to it, but I recorded it a couple months ago, and she's just a really fascinating, smart person that works with people around something called the mother wound, which we'll get into, and I'd never heard of either, but actually a listener of the podcast showed me this blog post that she wrote, and I found it really fascinating, and it really helped me out a lot, so I was really wanting to get her on the show, and I did, and now we all get to learn about this together. So make sure you tune in next week for that, and until then, I'll talk to you guys in the Facebook group maybe, or on Instagram or Twitter or something. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys soon. Love you. Bye.